Hello, I'm Bellinghamster, the new unofficial mascot of our fair city of subdued excitement, Bellingham. This is my sidekick, Hammie.
Hi, we're going to walk the trail from here in Fairhaven to the heart of Bellingham using the Rail Trail Walking Guide by Karl Kleeman and William Rink, learning along the way just how important the railroads were to the history of Bellingham.
The first leg of the walk, 1¼ mile, begins here at the Amtrak station in Fairhaven and ends at Boulevard Park. We will see 14 historic locations along the way. At the end of Harris Avenue, there was a 90-foot high hill called Poe's Point. In 1857, 2 men had been stationed on the hill to watch out for raiding Indians from the north. Legend has it that they had a bottle of whiskey, got drunk, and fell asleep, and were killed and decapitated by raiders. The hill became known as Dead Man's Point. This is an early view of Fairhaven from Dead Man's Point. Later, to reroute the railroad to the new shoreline route, men and horse teams made a major cut in the hill.
Yes, and look, you can see the train station.
The track was rerouted along the shore. The Fairhaven station was then located at the end of Harris Avenue, across the street from its current location. It was closed in 1903, and the station was relocated to downtown Bellingham.
The original station burned down and was replaced in 1927. It currently serves as the switching depot for Burlington Northern Railroad. With the advent of Amtrak in 1971, passenger service continued in the downtown station until 1995, when it was relocated to Fairhaven in the renovated office building of Pacific American Fisheries that now serves as the Amtrak and Greyhound stations.
Yes, this is how it looked in 1937. It operated along the shore where the Alaska Ferry Terminal is now located. This early panoramic photo shows the Great Northern Station, Dead Man's Point, Pacific American Fisheries Office, and the cannery. From the 1930s, the company's fortunes declined with the abolition of fish traps, uncertain salmon supplies, and corporate changes. The property was sold to the Port of Bellingham in 1966. The Puget Sound Sawmill and Shingle Company produced 135 million shingles in 1901 and was the largest shingle mill in the world right here in Fairhaven. Bellingham Bay was a bustling port with huge sailing ships hauling timber, lumber, and shingles worldwide.
Before we get to our next historical stop, let's look at some of the places of interest along the way.
That's Lanny Little's 2003 mural, Welcome to Fairhaven, with Dirty Dan Harris pictured in the window on the left, and in the other window, Tim Imus, the original owner of the building.
We are now heading north on 10th Street. And here is the Village Green Park. Take time to go up the stairs where you can take respite from your walk and see another of Lanny's murals. This one painted in 2000.
The pictorial shows the imposing Fairhaven Hotel at the top of the hill as it looked in 1927, and pictured in the foreground local people, present and past, who have made a difference in Fairhaven. We are still heading north on 10th Street, and soon we will be on the trail.
Our next historical site is where the Reed Brothers Boiler Works was located. This marker shows the dividing line between Fairhaven and Old Bellingham. In the late 1880s, Fairhaven thrived, and Old Bellingham was not successful and went into decline and almost forgotten. The Reed Boiler Works moved to this spot in 1912 from the Fairhaven waterfront, where it built boilers and retorts for the mills and canneries.
Yes, and it burned to the ground in a fire in 2014. Let's walk the Taylor Avenue dock from here to Boulevard Park.
In 1888, this wharf was built and named the Hill-Welburn Wharf. It provided storage of building materials, hay, and grain.
From here, we can see where the Pacific American Tar Company operated for many years.
They manufactured tar pitch, tar oil, gas, and charcoal, all from the fir trees.
And just south of us, the Northern Pacific built a freight station depot on a trestle over the water next to the Taylor Avenue dock, and built a wharf from the shoreline to the depot.
Okay, Hammie, we're off to our next historical site.
Pacific American Fisheries had their warehouse and salmon curing and smoking facility here.
I heard that they were getting 125,000 to 150,000 salmon a day in 1901.
Yeah, but that was when salmon traps were unregulated. Eventually the traps were banned, but only after permanent damage to the salmon resource. A gasoline fueling station built on piers was established here by Gilmore Oil Company in 1938. It was built to unload gasoline from ships and transfer by pipeline to storage tanks next to Taylor Avenue. In 1940, General Petroleum bought Gilmore Oil and continued operating the facility until 1974.
Over the years, several oil companies established oil storage tanks and distribution points at Taylor Avenue Dock. California Petroleum took over the old flour mill site in 1926, and Texaco bought it in 1928 and built a pipeline from the docks to their storage tanks on Taylor Avenue and operated there until 1996.
The Bellingham Flour Mill was a 3-story structure built on the shore. The warehouse stretched out to the west on pilings, reaching out to the Northern Pacific tracks with a small dock to load ships.
This is where Pacific Sheet Metal Works manufactured salmon cans in 1898 in a 3-story brick building on dry land just east of the Great Northern Railroad tracks. Soon after, 3 wooden buildings were constructed on pilings that extended out to the Northern Pacific Trestle. Eventually, they became salmon warehouses. In 1907, Pacific American Fisheries bought the buildings, and there they remained until the mid-1960s.
The Bellingham Bay and Eastern Railroad built a trestle on pilings in the tidewater offshore along the eastern side of the bay to complete the Great Northern, whose tracks were along the shore. The trestle is part of the South Bay Trail, although major renovation has occurred.
In 1883, a sawmill was built on the very tip of Paddles Point, now Boulevard Park. In 1900, the E.K. Wood Lumber Company purchased the mill, and the enterprise prospered until it was destroyed by a fire in 1925.
Look, Hammie, the white building in this old photo is now the Woods Coffee Shop here in Boulevard Park.
I would love a skinny double latte.
This completes the first leg of our rail trail walk. Say goodbye for now, Hammie.
Okay, bye. Yummy.
This is the second leg of Rail Trail, a 1.5-mile trek from here in Boulevard Park to Laurel Street in downtown Bellingham.
Yeah, and we will be walking the beautiful South Bay Trail and learning how the railroads were instrumental in the development of the early businesses and the city.
We are at the north end of Boulevard Park. The Bellingham Bay Gas Company was located right in front of us. It was designed to burn coal and create burnable gas, which the area had an abundance of. It was known by several names over the years, but finally named the Cascade Natural Gas Company that operated until 1956, when cheaper natural gas reached Bellingham via pipeline.
The Fairhaven and Southern was the first railroad to be constructed along the shore of Bellingham Bay. The Transcontinental Great Northern Railroad eventually bought it, and it became the main line into Canada.
The Bellingham Bay and Eastern built a trestle to Fairhaven out over the water on pilings, which Northern Pacific purchased, and this set up years of competition between Northern Pacific and Great Northern for business. This is where the two lines crossed. The South Bay Trail follows the old Northern Pacific right-of-way. Hammie, did you know that in 1850 a law by Congress allowed a single person to lay claim to 160 acres, and if married, 320 acres? The bill was repealed 5 years later, but all the land around Bellingham Bay was claimed.
Yes, this section of the shoreline was claimed by local men who weren't interested in settling or working the land. They just wanted to cash in. W.R. Prattle and Thomas and J. Morrison made claims.
Attempts at mining the poor quality coal on the Paddle claim were not very successful, but Union Coal Company established a small community here, and Unionville got its name from a cluster of small buildings that were located around the coal mine. In 1904, Northern Pacific started dumping logs from their trestle just to the left of us. You can see where the gas company was located in relation to Boulevard Park.
Yes, and they dumped some gigantic logs. If you look at the north end of Boulevard Park, you can see some pilings that remain.
In 1892, the Bellingham Bay and Eastern Railroad was built to bring coal for export from the Blue Canyon mine on Lake Whatcom to its wharf on Bellingham Bay. Coal was loaded onto rail cars at the mine and barged to the west end of the lake. Then the cars were transferred to the railroad and moved to the wharf on Bellingham Bay.
Wow! Look how high that trestle was. And look, it had a log dump. I bet it was quite a sight to see those big logs roll down and splash into the bay.
The Blue Canyon mine closed in 1903, but the log dump was used until it was demolished for safety reasons in 1904.
Our next destination is the site where a huge lumber and planing mill stood at the south end of Cornwall Avenue. It was started in 1889 as the Bellingham Bay Improvement Company, which formed a subsidiary, the Bellingham Bay Lumber Company.
In 1913, Peter Larson, J.J. Donovan, and J.H. Blodell bought it and named it the Blodell-Donovan Cargo Mill, which specialized in cutting lumber for export. This was the main office at the end of Cornwall Avenue and has been renovated and still in use.
Many companies did their own exporting and importing along the shore of the bay.
Yeah, big outfits like Pacific American Fisheries, Blodell Donovan Mills, E.K. Wood Lumber, as well as many small retailers such as Lemon's Furniture on Bay Street.
We are now at the south end of what was the downtown Northern Pacific Railroad trestle.
Today, this curved trestle forms a link between the South Bay Trail and downtown. The Northern Pacific then ran north, paralleling Railroad Avenue a half-block east in an alley, continuing north to its depot at Magnolia Street.
Here is a photo of a crew repairing the tracks right here behind the Bellingham Herald building in 1955.
Look, the old tracks are still here.
Then the Northern Pacific went east to the north shore of Lake Whatcom and eventually to Wickersham, where it met the Northern Pacific line running between Burlington and Sumas.
This completes the second leg of our rail trail walk. We are now on the third section of Rail Trail Walking Guide by Karl, Kleeman, and William Rink.
Yes, this 3/4-mile walk in downtown Bellingham shows how much railroads were a part of our community. Here we are at East Laurel and South Bay Trail. We go left here, then right onto the south end of Railroad Avenue.
On this part of our walk, we will learn a lot about early railroads in our fair city, including roundhouses, depots, and freight yards. Our final stop will be the Trolley Power Station, 3/4 of a mile north.
The Bellingham Bay and British Columbia Railway was chartered in 1883 by Pierre B. Cornwall, but it took 8 years to complete the line to Sumas.
They constructed the Seaholm Wharf on the bay and a right-of-way from the wharf up the bluff to a flat area that is currently near the corner of Maple and Railroad Avenue.
We are in the alley a half a block east of Railroad Avenue, where BB and BC had their roundhouse and turntable.
The turntable was 70 feet in diameter, and locomotives would be diverted to the appropriate bay for maintenance or storage in the engine house. But I'm wondering, why did they have a sand house?
Well, because of the grades the trains had to climb, they carried sand, usually up high in a sand dome, and sand would be delivered by piping to the rails just in front of the drive wheels, improving the traction of the locomotives, especially in wet weather.
The BB and BC was purchased by the giant Milwaukee Road in 1912, but was run as the Bellingham and Northern until 1918. Then it operated as the Milwaukee Road until 1980. Here at the corner of East Maple and Railroad Avenue, the BB and BC Railroad built its ornate passenger and freight depot in 1892.
Several years later, they added a hotel just north of the station. This had a profound impact on the town. They also built the first electric company, the first water system for New Whatcom, and a lumber mill.
Here we are in front of a popular pizza parlor at Chestnut and Railroad Avenue. The building used to be the station for the Milwaukee Road. It was built in 1940 and served the railroad until 1980, when the railroad went into bankruptcy.
Let's go up the street a bit and look at the takeout window. See that faded area above the door? That's where the angled square Milwaukee Road sign was hung.
Pizza! A slice of Margherita Supremo, per favore.
Is the pizza good, Hammie?
Perfetto. Railroad Avenue is wide enough for 2 traffic lanes and 4 rows of parking because it was used in the past as a freight yard with 4 tracks running down the center of the street.
Yeah, switching made Railroad Avenue a very noisy center of town.
The first transcontinental Canadian Pacific Railroad train from Montreal to Vancouver arrived here on Bellingham Bay and British Columbia tracks by way of Sumas on June 22, 1891.
This called for a big celebration with a giant wooden arch erected over the tracks on Railroad Avenue. Arrangements had been made for the train to pass beneath an arch of water directed by 2 of the city's fire hose companies, one on each side of the track. A bit of festivities involving liquor made for a rivalry between the 2 that resulted in a water fight.
The train, with its seats filled with prominent British and Canadian officials, had open windows resulting in a dousing of the VIPs. To add insult to injury, an ardent local patriot noticed that the British flag was mounted a few inches higher than the American flag. Shouts went up for a ladder. Down came the Union Jack, and to the horror of the distinguished guests trampled on.
Despite that, Canadian Pacific continued to use the tracks on Railroad Avenue.
Yes, and be sure to see the historical marker just a block north of here.
The Milwaukee Road ran trains into Bellingham until 1980. The annual Christmas tradition was a locomotive with a caboose that would bring Santa to town.
Yes, the town would turn out big time. This photo from 1948 was taken at Railroad Avenue and Holly Street.
So Hammie, 100 and some odd years ago, folks around here were amazed to see a futuristic 70-foot-long motor car here at the intersection of Railroad Avenue and Holly.
It operated on passenger runs between Bellingham, Linden, and Sumas. It was named the Culshan, Native American name of Mount Baker, and looked like a submarine on wheels.
Its aerodynamic design reduced wind resistance, so its 250 horsepower motor could propel the car to maintain 60 miles per hour on a level track.
It was not only sleek and fast, it was elegant inside, with Cuban mahogany, and was lighted by acetylene gas and heated by hot water.
Hey, Bellinghamster, I could really go for a bagel with a schmear. Yummy.
Hammie, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
You betcha. Yum. Yum, yum.
This is the city bus terminal at Railroad and Magnolia Avenue. In 1911, the building was originally built as the Northern Pacific Passenger and Freight Depot, and from here the trains ran southeast along the north shore of Lake Wacom to Wickersham, and south along the bay to Fairhaven.
In 1970, the Great Northern and Northern Pacific became part of the Burlington Northern System, and the depot was closed. All operations were moved to the Great Northern Station on Roeder Avenue.
Here we are at the north end of Railroad Avenue and the final historical site of the trail. The brick building in front of us is now occupied by Construction Supply. It was built in 1910 by the Whatcom County Railway and Light Company.
Yes, it provided power for the streetcars and electricity to the growing city. It contained a wood-fired 1,200 horsepower steam engine that drove generators that provided 1,500 kilowatts.
It's been fun to walk the rail trail and learn so much about our history.
It sure has. Look for the new, updated Rail Trail Walking Guide by Karl Kleeman and
William Rink.
Say goodbye, Hammie.
So long!